the room went dead silent. Not the kind of silence that comes before laughter or relief. No, this was the silence that comes before destruction. Ji-hoon's mother held the paper in her trembling hands, her eyes scanning the results over and over again. And then she looked up, straight at Nyambura. "I knew it," she hissed. "I knew from the very beginning that you were nothing but a liar." The words sliced through the air like shattered glass. Nyambura felt her legs weaken, but she did not fall. She refused to fall. Because deep in her spirit, deeper than the pain, deeper than the shock, she knew the truth. That baby was her husband's child. And no piece of paper, no matter what it said, could change what God had done. But what happened next? What happened when the real results finally came to light? Well, that's a story you need to hear from the beginning. 3 years earlier, Nyambura Wangari had just landed at JFK Airport. She was 26 years old, a pharmacist from Nairobi, with a scholarship to pursue her master's degree in New York. She had left behind everything she knew: her mother, her younger brother, her small church community in Westlands, to chase a dream that felt bigger than herself. She didn't come to America looking for love. She came looking for purpose. But sometimes, life has other plans. Ji-hoon Park was 30 years old, the eldest son of one of the most respected Korean-American families in Manhattan. His father, Dr. Samuel Park, was a renowned cardiologist. His mother, Helena Park, came from old money and old traditions. Ji-hoon was expected to marry Korean. He was expected to carry on the family legacy. He was expected to follow every single rule. But the moment he saw Nyambura at a pharmacy networking event in Brooklyn, something inside him shifted. She wasn't trying to impress anyone. She was standing in the corner, sipping orange juice, reading a book about herbal medicine. He walked up to her, not because she was beautiful, although she was. He walked up to her because there was something about her presence, something grounded, something he had never seen before. "What are you reading?" he asked. She looked up at him with calm, steady eyes. "A book about how plants can heal what modern medicine sometimes forgets." He smiled. She didn't. "Are you going to stand there, or are you going to sit down?" she asked. And just like that, Ji-hoon Park was hooked. Their relationship didn't happen fast. Nyambura was cautious. She had seen too many women lose themselves trying to fit into someone else's world. She told Ji-hoon early on, "I am a woman of faith. I don't compromise who I am for anyone." He respected that. In fact, he loved that, because Ji-hoon had spent his entire life surrounded by people who bent and twisted themselves to fit expectations. And here was a woman who stood like a mountain, unmovable, unshakable. After 2 years of dating, he proposed. Not in some fancy restaurant, not in front of cameras. He proposed in her tiny apartment in Queens, while she was making chapati. "Marry me, Nyambura," he said softly. "Not because my family approves, not because the world makes sense, but because I cannot imagine walking through life without you beside me." She wiped her hands on her apron and looked at him for a long moment. Then she said, "Let me pray about it." And she did. For 2 whole weeks, Ji-hoon didn't push, he didn't pressure, he waited, because he understood. This woman didn't make decisions lightly. When she finally said yes, it was with her whole heart. But the trouble began. Almost immediately, Helena Park, Ji-hoon's mother, made no effort to hide her disapproval. She didn't shout, she didn't scream, she was far too sophisticated for that. Instead, she used silence like a weapon, cold glances across the dinner table, backhanded compliments wrapped in poisoned silk. "Oh, Nyambura, that dress is interesting, very cultural. I'm sure Ji-hoon will get used to simpler meals. You must feel so out of place here. Don't worry, we don't expect you to understand our traditions." Every word was calculated. Every smile was hollow, but Nyambura, she did not crumble. She simply smiled back and continued being herself. She cooked her Kenyan dishes without apology. She wore her African jewelry with pride. She prayed every morning, sometimes out loud, even when Helena was in the next room. And every night, she whispered the same prayer. Lord, give me strength to stand. Give me wisdom to love. And give me grace to survive this family. Jihoon noticed everything. He saw how his mother treated his wife. He saw the exhaustion in Nyambura's eyes, even when she smiled, and he made a choice. He confronted his mother, privately, and told her, "If you cannot respect my wife, then you will not have access to our home." Helena was stunned. Her own son, choosing this outsider thus over his own family? She didn't argue. She simply nodded and began to plan. Because Helena Park did not lose. She waited. When Nyambura became pregnant, the tension multiplied. Jihoon was overjoyed. He painted the nursery himself. He read parenting books every night. He talked to Nyambura's belly, singing old Korean lullabies mixed with hymns she had taught him. For a moment, it seemed like things were finally falling into place. But Helena was watching and scheming. She had a cousin, Dr. Peter Kwan, who worked at the hospital where Nyambura was receiving prenatal care. Helena called him one evening and said something that would change everything. "I need a favor, and I need your discretion." Fast forward to 8 months into the pregnancy. Nyambura had gone to the hospital for a routine checkup, but something felt off. The nurse seemed nervous. The doctor, a man she had never seen before, asked strange questions. "Are you sure about your timeline? When exactly did you conceive?" Nyambura frowned. "Why are you asking me that?" The doctor smiled awkwardly. "Just routine questions, nothing to worry about." But Nyambura's spirit was unsettled. She came home that evening and told Jihoon, "Something is wrong. I can feel it." Jihoon held her. "Whatever it is, we'll face it together." She nodded, but that night she prayed longer than usual, and in her spirit, she heard a warning. "A storm is coming, but do not be afraid." She didn't know what it meant, yet, but she would soon find out. 2 weeks later, the baby arrived. A healthy boy, beautiful, strong, perfect. They named him Daniel, after Nyambura's grandfather. Jihoon cried when he held his son for the first time. "He has your eyes," he whispered. Nyambura smiled. "And your stubbornness." For a few precious weeks, everything was beautiful. Jihoon took time off work. They stayed home, wrapped in the joy of new parenthood. But Helena, she was not celebrating. She was waiting. 1 month after Daniel was born, Helena arrived at their apartment unannounced. She was not alone. Jihoon's father was with her. So was his younger sister Grace, and in Helena's hand was an envelope. "We need to talk," Helena said coldly. Jihoon frowned. "Mother, now is not a good time. Now is the perfect time." Helena's voice was sharp. "Because your family deserves to know the truth about the woman you married." Nyambura was in the bedroom, nursing Daniel. She heard the commotion and came out slowly. Her heart pounding, Helena held up the envelope. "I had a DNA test conducted. Don't look at me like that. I had every right. This family has a legacy to protect." Jihoon's face went pale. "You did what?" "The results came back yesterday." Helena opened the envelope and pulled out a single sheet of paper. "Jihoon, that child is not your son." The words hung in the air like smoke. Time seemed to stop. Nyambura felt her legs go weak, but she forced herself to stand. "That is a lie," she said firmly. "That baby is Jihoon's son. I have never, ever been with another man." Helena laughed coldly. "Of course you would say that, but science doesn't lie, even if you do." Jihoon's father looked devastated. Grace covered her mouth in shock. And Jihoon? He looked at the paper, then at his wife. then back at the paper. Everyone was waiting for him to explode, to scream, to accuse, to walk away, but instead, he handed the paper back to his mother and said something that made Helena's face twist in fury. "I don't believe it." Helena's eyes went wide. "What did you just say?" "I said, I don't believe it." Ji-hoon's voice was calm but firm. "I know my wife. I know who she is. I know her character, her faith, her integrity, and no piece of paper, no test, no whisper from this family will make me doubt her." Nyambura's eyes filled with tears. Not tears of weakness, tears of gratitude. Because in that moment, when the whole world seemed to be crashing down, her husband stood. He stood for her. He chose her. He believed her. Helena was livid. "You are a fool, Ji-hoon. That woman has bewitched you. She has brought shame to this family." Ji-hoon stepped closer to his mother, and for the first time in his life, he raised his voice. "Enough." The room went silent. "You have disrespected my wife since the day I introduced her. You have whispered behind her back. You have tried to sabotage our happiness at every turn. But this," he pointed to the paper, "this is too far." He took a breath. "Until you can show my wife the respect she deserves, you are no longer welcome in our home." Grace gasped. Ji-hoon's father lowered his head in shame, and Helena? She grabbed her purse and stormed out, but not before turning back with venom in her voice. "You will regret this. When the truth finally destroys you, don't come crying to me." The door slammed shut, and then it was just the two of them. Ji-hoon turned to Nyambura and pulled her into his arms. "I'm sorry," he whispered. "I'm so sorry you had to hear any of that." She shook her head. "Don't apologize. You did nothing wrong. Do you know that I believe you?" She looked into his eyes. "I know, and that is why I married you." That night, Nyambura stayed up late. She sat by the window, holding her son and praying. "Lord, you see everything. You know my heart. You know the truth. I don't know what is happening, but I trust you. Expose what needs to be exposed, protect what needs to be protected, and let your justice be done." She didn't know how, but she believed. Something was going to shift. 1 week later, Nyambura made a decision. She was not going to sit and wait for the storm to destroy her. She was going to fight. She called her best friend from pharmacy school, a woman named Esther, who now worked at a private diagnostic laboratory in New Jersey. "Esther, I need your help." Esther listened carefully as Nyambura explained everything. When she finished, Esther was silent for a moment. Then she said, "Something doesn't add up. You said the test was conducted at your hospital, but you never authorized it?" Nyambura paused. "No, I never signed anything." "Then how did they get the samples?" That question changed everything. Nyambura began investigating. She requested her medical records from the hospital and discovered something disturbing. A second set of forms had been submitted, with her signature forged. Someone had authorized the DNA test without her consent. And the name on the authorization? Dr. Peter Kwan, Helena's cousin. Nyambura brought the evidence to Ji-hoon. His face went pale. "She set this up," he whispered. "My mother, she orchestrated the entire thing." Nyambura nodded. "But we still don't have proof that the test was tampered with, only proof that it was conducted illegally." Ji-hoon clenched his fists. "Then we get another test, a real one, from a lab my mother has no access to." Nyambura agreed. They went to Esther's lab, together, and submitted new samples. The results would take 2 weeks, but in those 2 weeks, things got worse. Helena did not stay silent. She spread rumors throughout the family and the Korean-American community. She told everyone that Nyambura was a fraud, a cheater, a gold digger who had trapped her son with another man's child. Ji-hoon's friends stopped calling. His colleagues whispered behind his back. Even some of his own relatives sent him messages, urging him to wake up and see the truth. But Ji-hoon did not waver. He changed his phone number, he blocked the gossip, and he focused on his wife and son. "Let them talk," he told Nyambura. "The truth will silence them all." But the pressure was taking its toll. Nyambura lost weight. She couldn't sleep. She spent hours in prayer, sometimes crying, sometimes silent, sometimes simply holding her Bible to her chest. One night, Ji-hoon found her on her knees in the nursery, whispering the same verse over and over. "No weapon formed against me shall prosper. No weapon formed against me shall prosper." He knelt beside her and prayed with her. It was the first time he had ever prayed like that, not as a ritual, but as a desperate cry for help. And in that moment, something shifted in him too. 2 weeks later, the results from Esther's lab came in. Ji-hoon was at work when he got the call. He rushed home and found Nyambura standing in the kitchen, holding the envelope. She hadn't opened it yet. "I was waiting for you," she said quietly. They stood together and opened it. The words on the page were clear. Positive match. 99.98% probability that the tested male is the biological father of the child. Ji-hoon exhaled. Nyambura covered her mouth and broke down in tears. They held each other for a long time. "I knew," Ji-hoon whispered. "I always knew." Nyambura looked up at him. "But the world didn't, and now they will." But exposing the truth wasn't going to be simple. Helena had already poisoned so many minds. Even if they showed the real results, people would claim it was fake, based that they had paid someone off. They needed something more. They needed the original test to be exposed as a fraud, and that meant they needed Dr. Peter Kwan to confess. Ji-hoon hired a private investigator, a man named Lawrence, who specialized in medical fraud cases. Within a week, Lawrence uncovered a trail of corruption. Dr. Peter Kwan had a history of accepting bribes. He had been investigated twice before, but never convicted. And the lab technician who had processed the original DNA test, she had recently deposited $15,000 into her account from an unknown source. Lawrence traced the money. It came from a shell company, registered under a name that made Ji-hoon's stomach turn. Helena Park. They had the evidence, but they needed to deliver it in a way that could not be denied. Nyambura prayed about it for 3 days. And then she had an idea. "Let's give them what they want," she said quietly. Ji-hoon frowned. "What do you mean?" Nyambura smiled, a slow, knowing smile. "Your mother wants a family gathering, a public shaming, a moment to humiliate me in front of everyone. So let's give her that moment. Let's let her read her results. In front of everyone." Ji-hoon's eyes widened. And then, we let the truth walk in. Helena was thrilled when Ji-hoon called to suggest a family meeting. She thought he had finally come to his senses. She thought he was ready to leave his wife. She invited everyone, aunts, uncles, cousins, family friends, to the Park family estate on Long Island. Over 50 people gathered in the grand living room. Ji-hoon arrived with Nyambura and Daniel. The whispers began immediately. These people stared at Nyambura with contempt, with disgust, with pity. She walked through the room with her head held high, her son in her arms, her spirit unbroken. Helena stood at the front of the room, holding the original DNA results. "Thank you all for coming," she said smoothly. "I know this is difficult, but family must always stand for truth." She turned to Ji-hoon. "Son, I hope today you will finally see what we have all seen, that this woman has deceived you." Ji-hoon said nothing. He simply gestured for his mother to continue. Helena smiled triumphantly and began reading. According to the DNA analysis conducted at Manhattan General Hospital, the probability that Ji-hoon Park is the biological father of the child known as Daniel is 0%. Gasps filled the room. People shook their heads. Some muttered prayers. Helena looked at Nyambura with cold satisfaction. "Do you have anything to say for yourself?" Nyambura stood slowly. She handed Daniel to Ji-hoon. And then she spoke. "Mrs. Park, I have listened to your accusations for 3 years. I have endured your whispers, your insults, your cruelty, and through it all, I have remained silent, not because I was weak, but because I was waiting." She paused. "Waiting for the truth to be revealed." Helena scoffed. "The truth is right here in black and white." Nyambura nodded. "Yes, a truth that you manufactured." The room went silent. Nyambura continued. "That DNA test was conducted without my consent. My signature was forged. The lab technician who processed the samples was paid $15,000 to falsify the results. And the man who authorized the entire scheme was your own cousin, Dr. Peter Kwan." Helena's face went pale. "You're lying." "Am I?" The doors to the living room opened, and in walked 2 people. Lawrence, the private investigator, and Dr. Peter Kwan himself, handcuffed, escorted by 2 detectives. The room erupted in chaos. People were shouting, gasping, crying. Helena stumbled backward. "Peter, what is this?" Dr. Kwan looked at her with hollow eyes. "It's over, Helena. They have everything. The bank records, the lab reports, the emails, everything." One of the detectives stepped forward. "Helena Park, you are under investigation for fraud, forgery, and conspiracy to commit defamation. You have the right to remain silent." Helena tried to run, but there was nowhere to go. She was surrounded, exposed, defeated. Lawrence handed Ji-hoon a second envelope. "These are the real results, conducted at an independent laboratory, verified by 3 separate experts." Ji-hoon opened the envelope and read the results aloud. "Probability that Ji-hoon Park is the biological father of Daniel Park, 99.98%. The room fell silent. People looked at each other in shock. Ji-hoon's father, who had been sitting in the corner, stood up slowly. He walked toward Nyambura and bowed his head. "I am sorry," he said quietly. "I should have protected you. I should have seen what my wife was doing. Please, forgive me." Nyambura looked at him for a long moment. Then she nodded. "I forgive you." Grace, Ji-hoon's sister, came forward next. Tears streamed down her face. "I believed her," she whispered. "I believed our mother. I'm so ashamed." Nyambura took her hand. Shame is not what I want from you. What I want is for you to learn, to question, to never let anyone use your love as a weapon against the innocent." Grace nodded and hugged her. Ji-hoon stood in the center of the room and addressed everyone. "For 3 years, my wife has been treated like an outsider, like a threat, like someone who didn't belong, but she never complained. She never retaliated. She simply loved and prayed and trusted that the truth would come to light." He looked at Nyambura with tears in his eyes. "She is the strongest person I have ever known, and I am honored to be her husband." The room erupted in applause. Not everyone, but many. Those who had doubted her, those who had whispered behind her back, now stood in stunned silence. Some came forward to apologize. Others simply left, too ashamed to speak. But Nyambura didn't chase after anyone. She had nothing to prove. The truth had already spoken. Helena was led out of the house, her reputation in ruins. She would later face charges, not just for the DNA scheme, but for years of financial manipulation that the investigation uncovered. She lost her standing in the community. She lost her friends. And most painfully, she lost her son. Ji-hoon made it clear, until his mother truly repented, she would have no place in his family's life. It was the hardest decision he had ever made, but it was the right one. Months passed. Life slowly returned to normal, though nothing would ever be quite the same. Nyambura continued her work as a pharmacist. Ji-hoon reduced his hours to spend more time with Daniel. They moved out of the city to a quiet neighborhood in New Jersey where they could raise their son in peace. And every Sunday, they attended church together, a small multicultural congregation where no one cared about your last name or your background, just your heart. One evening, Ji-hoon found Nyambura sitting on the porch, watching the sunset. He sat beside her. "What are you thinking about?" She smiled softly. "I'm thinking about how God works, how he takes the worst moments of our lives and uses them to reveal the truth. Not just about situations, but about people." Ji-hoon nodded. "You never stopped believing," he said quietly, "even when everyone turned against you. Because I knew who I was, and I knew who held my future." Ji-hoon took her hand. "I'm sorry it took so long for the world to see what I always saw." She shook her head. "Don't be sorry. Be grateful, because now we know who truly stands with us, and that is worth more than any test result." A year later, Nyambura gave birth to their second child, a girl. They named her Grace, not after Ji-hoon's sister, but after the grace that had carried them through the darkest season of their lives. Daniel adored his little sister. "And Ji-hoon?" He cried again when he held her for the first time, because he had learned something through all the pain. Love is not proven by words. It is proven by action, by standing, by choosing someone, even when the whole world tells you to walk away. Nyambura often told their story to young couples who came to her for advice. She never sugarcoated it. She told them about the pain, the betrayal, the loneliness, but she also told them about faith, about the power of prayer, about the God who sees everything and exposes everything in his perfect timing. "Don't let anyone define your worth," she would say. "Not your in-laws, not society, not even the people who claim to love you. Know who you are. Stand in your truth, and let God fight the battles you cannot win." As for Helena, she eventually reached out, 3 years after everything fell apart. Not to apologize, not at first, but to ask. If she could see her grandchildren, Nyambura prayed about it, and after much thought, she agreed. But with conditions. Helena would need to attend counseling. She would need to demonstrate genuine change, not just words, but actions. And she would need to publicly acknowledge what she had done and ask for forgiveness. It took another year, but Helena eventually did all 3. She stood before the same family members she had once manipulated and confessed everything. She wept, she apologized, and for the first time in her life, she humbled herself. It wasn't easy, and it didn't erase the past, but it was a start. Ji-hoon watched his mother's transformation with cautious hope. He didn't trust easily anymore, but he also knew that people could change. His wife had taught him that. "Forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting," Nyambura told him one night. "It means choosing to release the pain, so it doesn't control your future." Ji-hoon thought about that for a long time, and eventually, he opened the door. Just a crack, just enough to let healing begin. Years later, when Daniel was old enough to understand, he asked his mother about the story. "Is it true that Grandma tried to make Dad leave you?" Nyambura nodded. "Yes, it's true. But Dad didn't leave." "No, he didn't." Daniel looked at her with wide eyes. "How did you stay so strong?" Nyambura smiled. "I prayed, my son, every single day. I prayed for strength, I prayed for wisdom, I prayed for your father, and I prayed for your grandmother even when she was trying to destroy me. Why? Because that's what love does. It doesn't give up on people, even when they give up on you." Daniel hugged her tightly, and in that moment, Nyambura knew all the pain had been worth it, because she had raised a son who understood what it meant to stand. This story is not just about a DNA test. It's about the tests we all face, the tests of loyalty, of faith, of character. It's about what happens when the world turns against you. And you have to decide, will you break Or will you bend and then rise again? Nyambura chose to rise, and she didn't rise alone. She rose with a husband who believed her, a God who defended her, and a truth that could not be silenced. So if you're watching this, and you're going through something similar, if someone is lying about you, if your family has turned against you, if you feel like the whole world is against you, remember this story. Remember Nyambura. Remember that the truth always, always comes to light, and when it does, it silences every lie. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to subscribe. Hit that notification bell so you never miss another powerful story like this one. And if you know someone who needs to hear this today, share this video with them, because sometimes the right story at the right time can change someone's entire life. Thank you for watching, and remember, your truth matters no matter who tries to bury it. God sees you, and He will make a way. Until next time, stay strong, stay faithful, stay you.